Right. Oh, okay, fantastic. It's another Thursday in the TEFL Development Hub, and today we've got a fabulous chat all about Pickatale, a reading app. Okay, so I'm joined by Emily, who's Chief Content Editor. So she can tell you much more about the app than I can, but I have seen it, I have used it, and it's really fun, it's really engaging, and it'll unlock the joy of reading for our learners. Okay, so thanks, Emily, for coming along today.
Thanks, Teresa. It's lovely to be here.
And so first of all, can you tell us a little bit more? What is Pickatale?
So, Pickatale is a children's reading platform. It originally started in Norway and was very focused a few years ago on the parent market, actually, for families, getting parents wanting to read. Our wonderful founder, Sig, he actually, like a lot of the best companies, I think the whole concept started because he found that there was a need for his children to be reading and to be engaged in reading, and in English. And he really wanted to sort of, find out, how to do it and what books he needed to read and what level he should be reading them at, and get the kids engaged and wanting to read, which seemed to be a part of the battle. And so he looked around, and at that time he couldn't really find the answers to his question, and he couldn't find the place to go. And that's really how Pickatale was kind of conceived and thought of. And a lot has happened since then. But it's a children's reading platform. It's available, as an app, so for your tablets or Android and so on. But also, what has really shifted us for the international markets and ELT markets is we now have a web app as well. So you can use it on any computer, and that's been a huge made a massive difference to us, and we're seeing momentum gather now in terms of people joining us.
Fantastic. I mean, I think it's great how you say it kind of came from this idea of the family and getting children engaged in reading. Because I think, people always talk about nowadays how they see children see adults on their phones and so they want to be on the phones. And if they're actually using an app that's getting them reading and loving stories, I think that's a really great use of mobile technology.
Well, that's a really good one because I that we often talk about that, and when people say, "Oh, are you anti-print books?" and it sort of makes me giggle because I'm like, we're pro-reading, we're not anti-print, but we're also acknowledging that children, young learners, their world does include technology. So then we're talking about a bit like a healthy diet. We're talking about what does a healthy reading diet look like, and some screen time for reading is actually a very positive and engaging way, particularly we find with reluctant readers or those that like a little bit of competition with their quizzes, like with their comprehension. It's just a really good way, and I like to think that people see it as a positive use of digital technology rather than some of the things that we see which actually do have a more negative potentially effect. So yeah, we're pro reading in any form.
And I think that's so true. I mean, also, it just makes reading so much more accessible. Kids might not have parents who are able to take them to the library once a week to grab a book, or, books are getting more and more expensive as well. Certainly here in Spain, books
Yeah.
are they're much more expensive than they are in the UK. So yeah, it just makes it much easier for kids to go, oh, I want to read that and that and that.
Accessing reading, I think, is something, again, is at the heart of, I talked about SIG earlier, but that was absolutely at the heart of it, is that every child should have access to a book, any book. And that's absolutely critical. We had one, actually, this was so we have some content that comes from partner companies as well. And in the UK, I'm afraid not available yet on any of the international platforms. But in the UK, we have a small publisher that we work with called Sweet Cherry. I say small, I mean, they're huge, but they're an independent publisher, Sweet Cherry. And we had an incident where one of their books was read by a teacher on the platform, and they loved it so much that not only did they send them out digitally to the children, but they also had bought class copies of the print book. So we always use that as a very good example of actually how sometimes it can be a benefit on both ways. So, you know, those things show that you can, yeah, you can access those books, you can have them in the library, and it should be part of the library diet. So go and have your school libraries, but have your digital library in your pocket as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's it. When you find a book that you love, you want that physical copy. And, you know, just having the app means that you can read so many more different stories and then choose which is your favorite. It's great.
Absolutely. And as you say, at a price that is affordable, we are very aware how difficult it is for people to be able to in the current climate. It's not just, it's kind of almost globally, isn't it? Like the print costs have gone up, children's access to text, amazing now with technology, and this is something I'm really excited by, is how much the costs though have got down, for us to be able to sort of sort out narration costs so that people can hear the words being said. So that it's interesting, there's a lot going on at the moment because the industry is changing so much. So there's pros and cons, but hopefully a reasonable subscription-based model like ours is one that brings it to everybody.
Fantastic. And so you mentioned before how there's this competitive element with the books through the quizzes. And I mean, that's how I first found out about it because I was involved in writing some of the
Yeah.
quizzes. And I was just amazed by the variety of books that were available on the platform. So what sort of content can people access?
Yes, so it's our platform, actually, I should say, is for 3 to 11 year olds, and you will remember that because, as you say, you were absolutely central to helping us in creating a lot of our quizzes. So it's 3 to 11 year olds, and it very much, so we've got Pickatale stages, which takes you from a stage 0 to a 6+. And within that, for different markets, we very carefully, we've got the CERFR framework links and so on. But within all of that, you've then got books that are fiction, books that are non-fiction. There are books that are specifically around learning to read. So we've got some phonics books in there. And we've also got a little bit of poetry, biographies. So it's a very nice mix, I think, of stuff which is going to hopefully engage different readers. We have some content, so we've got some for like brands and licensing with our partners. So for example, Oxford University Press, we've got some of their lovely children's picture books, and I think that gives English language, or anybody really wanting to engage with the English language, an opportunity to get really rich stories and hear some of that lovely vocabulary in their reading and in their learning experience. We are in the process of being much more focused on the learning to read bit alongside our Reading for Pleasure library. So there's going to be a few more of those readers coming in soon as well.
Excellent. So I mean, obviously the app isn't just for language learners, it's for absolutely everyone.
Anybody who is wanting to read children's content in the English language can absolutely access it. Interestingly as well, we have partners around the world, different partners who have Pickatale, and their content can sit in Pickatale. So for example, one partner we have is called Universal ELT, and they're based in Turkey. And they have our books as English books alongside their program. So as you say, the children can just enjoy having this amazing bank of children's books to listen and read that are carefully, appropriately, I wouldn't say leveled, because they've got their English language program, but then the children can access this library of Pickatale books to enjoy, and their English will get better and better all of the time. But also, there's the option of having our Pickatale originals just in Turkey at the moment, as with Universal ELT on the Pickatale platform. You can actually have our Pickatale originals in English, but you can also have them, 300 of them, in Turkish. So we do work with our different partners to get the right thing for their markets and what they need in their languages.
And like you say, it's just developing this love of extensive reading as well. I mean, I think often when we talk about extensive reading, we talk about it with teens and adults, and we're expecting them to read books like thick books and newspaper articles, and you go, well, a children's book is maybe 6 pages, but it's just about developing that love of picking up a book, picking up your phone and looking through things.
And
Mhm.
you watch the children when, one of the joyful parts of being in my job is that we often get to actually, meet with teachers, meet with children, and we're sort of finding out about, what's engaging them. And, you can see the children getting, excited or engaging in the book. And it's really magical and wonderful to see that. In some markets where we have some Disney content, which is really interesting, Disney and Marvel. And that's been very interesting for looking. I love looking at kids who perhaps don't normally read, and then they find Spider-Man. And then it's like you've unlocked that door because it's like, oh, it's Spider-Man. So actually, maybe this reading thing on screen with Spider-Man suddenly is looking quite engaging. So yeah, you're right. There's all this stuff that they can engage with.
I mean, I just got a Kindle for Christmas, my first ebook, and
Oh,
obviously, and it's great. I love it. I read a whole book on the train the other day, which I wouldn't have done, I don't think, otherwise. But so obviously, when you've got your Kindle, it is just text on screen. But with the app, I mean, it's bright, it's colourful, there's pictures.
yeah, that's a really good point about the Kindle, actually, because so I think once a reader, always a reader. I'm hilarious. I have my paper stuff that I read. I have my, obviously, day to day, I've got the app, the Pickatale app, but I also, I'm looking at websites. I'm looking at, I've got my Kindle reader. I've got all of this diet of reading, if you like, but definitely what you don't get is for the children's stuff. It's that the kind of almost, I don't, if I say interactive, we do have some little animated books as well, but yeah, you're getting the full, it's the color and the text and the whole experience of that kind of, I guess it's like, it must be like what it was like with black and white TV and then moving to color. It just brings it alive in a slightly different way.
Excellent. So we talked a little bit, obviously there's fiction text, there's non-fiction text, there's a whole series of books as well with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals,
Yeah.
aren't there?
Yeah.
And I think like diversity, equity, inclusion, they're big topics nowadays in ELT and in education in general. Are there any particular stories that you think kind of cover these topics for teachers?
Yeah, so we've got a few series actually. So you said about the Sustainable Development Goals, and we're very mindful and thoughtful about the images that we include to be as diverse as possible. For the fiction, there's a lovely series called Celebration Street, and there's a group of characters, and you'll actually see a lot of thought was put into the work with those, so that you see black and ethnic diverse characters in those books. And they're not, there was a huge piece of work that was done by the Centre for Literacy, I think it's an educational research, primary education, CLPE. And they looked, it started in 2017 or 18, and I've been tracking that research a lot. And they identified that there were lots of books where there were not main characters, that children could find characters like themselves in the books that they're reading. So why would they want to engage with these books that it felt excluded? And I think that's, was a really, it shone a real light into the publishing industry more widely, and was saying, come on, like, this isn't acceptable. And so that then lots of people have come into that space, and I hope have addressed it. It still needs to be addressed, but are doing a lot more. I know Jasmine Richards works for a company called Story Mix, and she does a huge amount of work there. So there's lots of people in that space to make a difference. But we've absolutely tried to look at look at that as a company and make sure that our content is as diverse as possible. So yes, Celebration Street's one of my favorite. You'll find lots of non-fiction. There's hopefully when you go in, like we did this lovely very early stage series, about 60 books from a well-known author called Rachel Lawrence, and she's got some great stuff in there. It includes kids, just the children are there. It's non-fiction, so children with disabilities. It's just part of, there's a lovely book about dancing, and everyone's a dancer, the child in the wheelchair, so on. So it's not tokenistic. It's just genuinely trying to ensure that we're more diverse, and we need to do more, and we're working on that, and making sure that our books, really do reflect the world of the children that are reading them.
Fantastic. So, I mean, you mentioned Celebration Street as one of your kind of favorites. Have you got any other favorite books on that?
Oh my gosh. I have to be careful here because of all my authors, all of our publishers. I would say that I really love some of I'm such a stickler. I love some of the classic traditional tales. There's a whole series of those which I really love. Something that I'm working on right now, I'm fascinated by, and I would urge people to check out. We've just launched our first top picks book. So this is a series where we have actually been experimenting with AI to develop. So we've got our beautiful author books, and we've got our beautiful licensed books, but we've now got books that we don't obviously just generate AI and shove it on the platform. There's still editors and designers and everybody involved, and it goes through lots of iteration. But our passion was we wanted to create a series of books that covered as many core areas of the wider curriculum as possible. So people could put in a history objective or something like that, and books would come up very fast on those sorts of topics. And so we've been playing around. We've just launched it. We're playing around. We'd love to hear what people think of it. It's early stage, but I guess right now I've just been working on that, so I'm kind of quite excited. We do have mentioned Rachel Lawrence books. I just love those early readers. From Exist, I'm a bit of a phonics fanatic for helping children learn to read, and I know that the ELT market, phonics is for younger children. It's that market is growing. I've worked on a lot of phonics products before. I love our little Exist readers, which are there to kind of so for example, phonics, for those that don't know, some people I assume know very well, but just to break it down, there are 44 phonemes. The children learn the phonemes like k, a, t. You blend it together and it makes the word cat, and children learn those sounds in a particular order. So these books are created for children to read using only the sounds that they will have learnt at that particular stage. So usually the first 6 sounds are known as satpin, sat, it, and then you add, their letters are added as they go. And so those books get progressively longer. And I just happen to like phonics a lot. So those ones, there's a load of classics that are done by Arc Tourist Publisher that we host on our platform on the international packages. And those are things like the Jane Austen books, Charles Dickens, but they're done as early readers. So I think for people who are doing English language teaching, well, actually anyone, but it's at the children's level. So they're getting this kind of richness of the heritage of some of these books from British writers, historically, and they'll be familiar with some of those, Alice in Wonderland and things like that, but they can get them. I love the classics, so obviously I'm all in there. So yeah, there's a wide range. And the last one that I would recommend is the Bearport bios, which are biographies. They're incredibly diverse, actually. Biographies of like well-known people, contemporary figures that kids can kind of relate to. And there's everything from obviously politicians, through to musicians, through to sports people. And so I think that's a lovely one to get some of those, get kids reading and learning about the current world.
Mhm, mhm. I don't know whether it was one from that series, but the first book that I read on the Pickatale app was all about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yes, it's from that series. It's from that series. How cool is that?
Yeah, that was the first quiz I wrote was about The Rock.
I mean, how awesome that we've got The Rock on the Pickatale platform for kids to read. I love that that was your first quiz. And I'm glad that after that you went like, what? But no, that's fabulous. And that's exactly the kind of content we've got, stuff that's going to really get those kids engaged. Perhaps, like if The Rock's on there, like, they're going to read.
Yep, yep, definitely. I mean, there's dinosaurs on there. I love dinosaurs. There was like
Yeah.
DNA profiling when you get to the
Now
higher
that
levels.
So that DNA profiling series, there are 3 books, and I feel really badly because the name of the doctor that has written them, the woman has written them, has just gone from my mind. So I apologize. I can type it on the Facebook channel later. But I was really excited when we got those because they're actually the kind of thing that Pickatale can really promote because she wrote them herself. They're sort of self-published and managed with an agent. But we got them on our platform, and it's been brilliant to sort of see the interest in her trilogy. And she goes around actually to schools and does science experiments because she is a scientist. She really does know her stuff. And she's an expert in this, but she's got this wonderful imagination where she's created this world of the DNA detectives. So she really is using real scientific facts in a story for kids. So when they're getting it, although it's sort of this fun story, there is the stuff that she's talking about in there is based on science, which is wonderful.
So cool. That's so cool. Awesome. Um, going back to what you said before about the narration. Are all of the books narrated?
Yeah, so at the moment, most of the books are narrated. We had started off initially with all of the books being narrated at the lower levels. But now we're finding much more international and ELT interest, like particularly in the last year, it's gone crazy. Our aim is, I think by this June, everything we're working to make sure that everything is narrated. And it also has the highlighter that goes as the children are reading the books. So at the moment, all of the lower levels, most of the books, but yeah, we're making sure that we can say all of our books because we read when we first did it, we were sort of had this vision of like we'll take away some of the narration to encourage the children to read without that support. But actually, we're going to say that all books are available, and our wonderful tech team, who are just incredible, and they pivot. That's what's so nice at being kind of like a startup, small company, is we're able to pivot and adapt to customer feedback. And again, over the coming months, then we can give the teacher that option of turning it on or off for the child. So things, as we evolve the platform, those sorts of options become more possible.
Fantastic. And the idea to include quizzes, was that also in response to moving into the ELT market, or was that just in general?
Actually, the quizzes have always been on the Pickatale platform. When we asked you to write, what had happened was the quizzes originally had been written just as fun quizzes to get kids engaged, and they still are. But what we've done with working with educationists like yourself is they've been rewritten for the schools market. So we've got these brand new quiz that's based on a pedagogy. So I'm going to have to test myself now without my notes, but I'm pretty sure we've got lower order skills and higher order skills. And there was, so you're looking at retrieval. So as you remember this, so making sure that there's a retrieval question, that there's inference, there's explanation, there's summary or sequence, and there's one more that has escape, vocabulary. So, and those 5 questions come at the end of each book. From a stage 1 upwards, stage 0 is like almost pre-reading, and that they need a different, because they can't read even the questions. We have to think about that. We're getting audio in for that, but stage 1 and above. And the at the moment, that's for all of the Pickatale originals, but we're now expanding that out for the partner books as well. But what's exciting there is we have tagged all of the questions. So in the teacher dashboard that's there for the teachers, they will be able to identify now the kids are having fun and doing their quizzes, but they'll be able to see for each child the profile with a bar graph or similar, because someone will come back from work and say, well, we're not showing it as a bar chart. So in my mind it's a bar chart, but it might be a pie chart, but there'll be some form in the next it's quite soon, like in the next few months, sort of 3 to 4 months, the teacher dashboard will have the ability to actually identify those levels of comprehension. So the teacher can see, oh, this child's knowledge of vocabulary is really high. They're very good at lower order comprehension skills, but inference and deduction, they're struggling. I can see there's this consistent struggle as they do the books. So kids have fun, teachers have data, but they can then be very targeted at understanding what's going on there.
That's amazing.
I know, it's wonderful. I love
Yeah.
that's where I get excited, because I love books. I love children's reading. I've worked in educational publishing pretty much all my career. And tech has always been quite, there's all been lots of whizzy stuff and innovation, but I think we've really got to this exciting point now where we can use those data points and we can get that information. So we engage the kids, we give the teachers the information that they need to help the kids get better, and then we've got children who will hopefully improve. We can see how long they're reading for on the teacher dashboard. Is the book taking them a long time? Have they really read it? Could you really read that book in 30 seconds? Come on. So all of that stuff can feed information and help people know what's getting them excited.
Fantastic. And so at the moment, it's available when you first go onto the app. There's an option for schools and for families.
That's right.
Aside from the kind of teacher dashboard, are there any other differences between the different signups?
The teacher dashboard and the actual facilities for schools to be able to, so for example, schools can they can add their children to a class, and then they can actually assign books and things like that. So all of that functionality isn't available on the parent app. There are some examples, not many, of slightly different content, but that would be where a deal is done with a partner, specifically in that territory, and it's for the home market only. We did a wonderful project with a company in Compass Gramedia in Indonesia, and that was very much aimed more for the home market. So it all depends on on what's required. But to be honest with you, those are the main thing is around the teacher dashboard, the teacher accessibility, the data collection, and how things are presented, because the purpose for the teacher is different for the parent.
Awesome. And you mentioned earlier about how this DNA series, that was kind of originally a self-published series. If people have an idea for a book, or they want to get in touch, what can they do?
Yeah, so if people are interested in writing for Pickatale, I can send my I can put my email address in the chat group if people want to make contact. Predominantly, I mean, for the next few months, we're most of our commissions have been agreed, but we're always looking for people. So please send us your thoughts, your ideas. Because you never know that there could be something there that we can host on the platform, and we're very fair. We split the rates and all that, platform fees, so people can get their books up. But the other thing I would say as well is I'm quite interested in finding people like, I mean, people like you, Teresa, who've got some experience on ELT as well, sometimes to perhaps review content, or there may be things that can be done specifically for the ELT market as well. So just, yeah, reach out, I would say.
Fantastic. And also as well, if people are using the app and they want to send feedback, I mean, you mentioned how useful it is, and being a small startup, you can work
Yes.
on that feedback.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. People can absolutely reach out. I'll add a couple of email addresses specifically because I know I can't think what it is off the top of my head, but we have one for like a general contacts one that can go, and then they can direct the email to the right person. So I will give you all of that, Teresa.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Emily, for coming along to chat about the app. I mean, like I say, I saw it and I just think it's such a fabulous resource, not just for teachers, but also for families to have that access. You know, if you go on holiday, you don't want to take a pile of books with you, but take
You've
the
got
app.
your library in your pocket.
Fantastic.
Thank
Well, thank you very much for everyone that's tuned in. If you've got any questions, feel free to pop them on the chat and I can pass them on to Emily. And we'll see you again in another couple of weeks. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.